sponsored by Squarespace. It's the question cutting to the heart of the community, maybe the biggest question in Warcraft right now. One so big, Blizzard apparently needs a 3 expansion arc to answer it. What is the deal with the goddamn sword? What's going on with Sargeras, with the Titans, with Illidan? All of that stuff. But more than just those, we've been promised resolution to that question. But the War-a-thon's almost over, and we're essentially none the wiser. So when will we find out? When will we find out why Sargeras stabbed the planet? Is there another step to his plan? Was it a plan? Was he just angry? Will someone, someday, pull it out? Look, there aren't many solutions to such a massive problem, but here's the good news. Resolution is coming, and it is happening in the game right now. So today, I'm going to show you exactly how they're doing it. And answer once and for all, at least for now, when will that sword be relevant? I've also got a bit of a challenge for you. Give me 30 minutes, and with today's sponsor, you'll finally have the website that you've been meaning to build. So Squarespace is an easy-to-use site builder and award-winning templates, but they have developed so much as a platform lately. Design Intelligence is their mix of tools that help you access their 20 years of design experience easily. It starts with Blueprint AI, and that starts with a few questions. Once you answer those, you'll use their interactive design system to build your own template, just the way that you like it, but with them keeping you right, with designer-picked fonts and color palettes, all matched to your aesthetic, and then from there, you can iterate on your copy and your content. It's all seamlessly integrated, and if you've just been overwhelmed in the past, or you just want to start quickly with all of your bases covered, this set of features is literally made for you. And their core platform is always growing as well. They've got native video support, so you can have a gorgeous player, you can have video gallery layouts that are all interoperable with their e-commerce tools. It's real impressive, and when I needed sites, Squarespace was my first port of call because they make it easy. So to get started today, go to squarespace.com/BellularGaming, check out Design Intelligence, and when you're ready to send your site live, use code BellularGaming for 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain. Exactly 8 years ago this month, Sargeras stabbed the planet, and finally, we're getting resolution. Just listen to this.
Will I be expected to walk in Quest 1 and yank the sword from the planet?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I would say to that, I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, the sword, the resolution of the sword that we started with at BlizzCon, actually, that's a 13 thing. We're going to build to that, and it's a doozy.
One does not simply yank a sword from Azeroth.
I would even say you are not prepared for that moment.
Yes, that's Chris Metzen telling us that we're not prepared. Illidan's big line. So, Sargeras and Illidan then. I think they're characters who will be back. And this is where the whole Worldsoul Saga is driving. BlizzCon 2023 had these huge cutouts of the sword, and they made it clear, beyond the Worldsoul, this whole thing was cooked up to finally put that sword to rest as well. So the answer is clear. The end of the trilogy, The Last Titan, that's it. Video done. No, obviously not, because here's the thing. We don't have to wait. Stuff is happening in-game right now. It's not there on the surface, but Xal'atath is actually full of lore that is pointing toward the sword, and exactly what will happen with it. So, let's figure out why this is such a huge problem, and then we'll figure out what will happen next. Sargeras stabbing the planet was the end of Warcraft's most fundamental story, the Legion. We got a big sword sticking out of Silithus to remind us that it happened, and at the time, it felt like he was angry and just wanted to kill Azeroth. But that didn't sit well with us as time went on. What was he doing? There must have been something more going on. I mean, seriously, did he aim for something and just miss? Was he an idiot? We demanded answers. And then came this moment.
And so at the end of Legion, so like there's a cinematic, and Sargeras, as you know, stabbed the earth with a sword, and it's been there for quite a while, and I'm not really sure like where are things going with that.
Wait, what sword?
Okay, all right. I get it. I see. That's pretty much exactly what I would expect.
Now that was back during Dragonflight, and it seemed like the sword issue just wasn't on Blizzard's radar. But then this guy showed up, the Twilight Hermit. Now he's been sulking about the lore since Battle for Azeroth, but the release of transmogs based on Sargeras' sword actually made things clear, because Blizzard was working with something. If you transmogrify to the sword and then go to the Twilight Hermit, he will have this to say. Quote, "He was far too masterful a tactician to choose this target by chance. His crusades sought to eradicate all life from existence. Do you think his final act would not be in service of that goal?" This line drove speculation into overdrive. We finally learned that Sargeras chose his target, that it was based on his original goal of wiping out all life. Now, in the previous expansion, we met the Jailer, and the Jailer tried to dominate Azeroth using the Xal'atath engines. Hand-wavy cosmic stuff aside, here's basically the point. If you killed Azeroth, you'd kind of mess up the entirety of existence, because it turns out she's quite important. And as much as just about none of us liked how we got to that story, it did make total sense, and it felt like Sargeras was driving at something similar. But then, everything changed. Chris Metzen returned. With Warcraft being 30 years old, this kind of might be news to some of you. Sargeras was the big bad of the Warcraft universe. Literally, he was the reason why orcs invaded in Warcraft 1, which happened in 1994. Now, his first mention, right, was as an unnamed demon lord who struck a bargain with Gul'dan. He then tried to take Azeroth in the War of the Ancients. He then sent the orcs through the Warcraft RTS games, then the Scourge in Warcraft 3, who of course then kicked off the Second Legion invasion. We cut to the Burning Crusade. Kil'jaeden pulled himself halfway out of the Sunwell. He announced the Burning Crusade for Azeroth was back on, and then every expansion from that point onward was overshadowed by Sargeras. Then, of course, in steps Illidan. Turns out, the guy that we fought back in Black Temple, who started talking to that skull and really seeming kind of sketchy, actually wasn't insane. No, it was all a cover, because in reality, Illidan was working to end the Burning Legion. Multiple patches later, he brought us to Argus, and on Argus, kind of ended the Legion. Like, we just flat out defeated them. And then we found Sargeras over Azeroth, stabbing the planet. Now that's the TLDR of how the sword ended up where it is right now. But here's what's more important. Everything that I just described was Chris Metzen lore, his arc, and that sword was its final moment. And if you feel like I'm just saying that and there's some context missing, basically, there's a bunch of IRL stuff. It's all about when Chris Metzen was in the company, when he burnt out, and what some of the final work that he did at Blizzard was, which, by the way, was the Battle for Azeroth cinematic. At least that's what we believe right now. But the overarching point is the person who architected all of Blizzard's major plot lines for a very long time indeed is back. And that's what brings us to BlizzCon 2023. Chris Metzen returned to Blizzard around 8 months into production of The War Within. He kinda then just smashed whatever he found into this saga of expansions. The whole thing had one point: to bring resolution to the sword, to tie off the many crazy loose ends and fragments in the Warcraft lore. But what does that actually mean? Well, it means everything from the end of Legion to the beginning of the War Within was essentially out the window. There was a new plan, and it kicked off in Khazalgar. Not because that was the best place to kick it off, but, well, because they were already 8 months into building the damn thing. And that meant we were going to deal with Earthen, and because of the Earthen, we would deal with Titans. We would then also deal with Xal'atath and the Void, and that would mean the truth of our world soul. And this was all linked by one question. A question so obvious that Ian Hazzikostas wore it on a t-shirt as he announced all of this stuff. So let's dive into the details. Okay, there's a mountain of lore we could cover, but I think we all know the basics there. That Sargeras did what he did because he was kind of lied to. The Nathrezim told him that the Void would consume everything, and that he would need to wipe out all life to stop the Void from manifesting. Which does make it kind of strange. In patch 11.2, we fight and defeat the most powerful being of the Void, Dimensius. It's kind of set up that there's literally nothing bigger or more devouring than Dimensius, the All-Devouring. And included in the All is actually 2 other Void Lords. He is a hungry, hungry boy indeed. Now, that is what terrified Sargeras to the point of insanity. Which makes it kind of odd that we're blasting off to Koresh to go and destroy him, to destroy the thing that scared Sargeras so much. And that does mean we're living proof that Sargeras really didn't need to go off the deep end. He didn't need to go mad, didn't need to do the whole Burning Legion. We quite literally have the power to do what Sargeras was worried he couldn't. And that, in a way, is the point of the whole Worldsoul Saga, that Khazalgar is not just a holiday, that we're basically there to find out just how strong Azeroth and her champions are. Now, we know from the Legion lore that Sargeras already had a fairly good idea, actually. That's because of this item, the Jeweled Scepter of Sargeras. And it told us something very important. In its flavor text, we learned that he visited the Worldsoul and became enraptured by what he saw. And we're seeing the same thing right now. And I mean that literally. It's what Anduin saw in Silithus. It's the core of Orwena's arc. We're being shown the same sort of thing that changed Sargeras, that Azeroth is basically kinda like nothing else. Of course, we learn that from the Shadowlands, but I far prefer how it's being presented in the War Within. Now, with Azeroth's power, quite literally anything is possible, which, of course, means something. It means that when we see Sargeras again, there's a fairly good chance that he will be different, changed. Maybe he'll have had some time to cool off and he'll see the opportunity. After all, by the time he's back, we will have put the void in the ground. That was the thing that Sargeras was afraid of. And more than that, we may even be ready to face off against one of Sargeras' oldest enemies, the Titan Pantheon. At least, perhaps. Now, that's the stuff that's happening in The Last Titan, but as I said, lots of that story is happening now. So here's the contemporary evidence. This is a Thragar, and a Thragar is kind of an agent of the Titans infected by Azeroth's energy. And I know that may seem like a whole bunch of bullshit, but here's how we actually know it's true. If you turn in the Titan Disc fragments in Dornogal, you will learn about the Manifold. It's a series of Titan-built installations designed to pump Azeroth full of Order energy, arcane energy, basically Titan energy. Now, as it turns out, we learn Azeroth really did not like that. So what she did is she infected the Titanforged who were building the Manifold, especially one core bit of it that is called the World Core, which basically is a big prison. She infected them with this pesky little thing called free will. So they got this free will and they named themselves the Thragar. By the way, if you're wondering why they kind of look like Magni Bronzebeard, it's because, they're kind of the same thing. So what they then did with their free will is kind of realize that being mindless robot servant things is kinda shit, and this whole World Core thing really does look like a bit of a prison. So they turned their tools on the World Core. Now, of course, their bosses, the Keepers, weren't really a fan of this, so they took extreme measures. They destroyed many of the Thragar. Most, though, just had their memories wiped, turning them back into lovely servants, docile servants, once again. But it turns out that actually wasn't enough. No, Azeroth's energy still flooded out, and it slowly turned the Titanforged into mortals with free will. That's not something that happened underground, not something from the past. That is quite literally the story of Dornogal. You know those memory gems the Earthen have got all over their bodies? Those are actually the same failsafes that the Keepers installed. Failsafes to stop them becoming mortals. Now, as it turns out, that didn't work. And that explains why, if you walk around Dornogal, you may notice there are no Titan Keepers. Basically, Azeroth kind of made the Earthen a bit more mortal, have a little bit of free will, and when they got their free will, they just straight up killed their Keepers to escape slavery. And for that to seem like a reasonable course of action, we need to understand just how brutal the Titans are, and just how much Azeroth wants to be free. And that this needs to happen before the Titans return. Now, you may think, okay, that's a bunch of cool lore, maybe I knew it, maybe I didn't, but how does it connect to the bloody sword? Well, it's kind of what I said at the start of the video. He was aiming at something. We literally know from the Hermit that Sargeras was aiming at something, and we actually just found what he was aiming at. Back at the end of Legion, we thought Sargeras was just trying to kill Azeroth, but let's assume that that was not the case, because it certainly would not be in line with what the Twilight Hermit said. Okay, so killing Azeroth, off the menu. What then could he have been doing? Well, let's think about what we found underneath Silithus. We found this, the Chamber of Heart. Now, this is an installation that hooked up directly to the Worldsoul, and it was built by the Keeper Arcadis. Do you remember Arcadis? You may if you played this expansion, but if you didn't, well, he's the guy from those Titan Disc hand-ins. Actually, he's who we've got loads of this information from. Now, in those Titan disc hand-ins, we basically get audio logs from Arcadis, and he tells us that he built this massive web of installations. It includes all the Titan places we visited over the last 20 years and has an overall name, that name being the Manifold. Now let's expand this. Some call the Manifold a prison for the Worldsoul, the grasp the Titans have over our planet. I want you to think back to Dragonflight. Iridikron told us something crucial. He said that when the Harbinger, Xal'atath, tore Azeroth from their grasp, they would return. They being the Titans, and of course that mattered to Iridikron because he's got a grudge and he wants to kill them. So, here are the steps. In Khazalgar, we find out about all of this stuff. We essentially learn what Arcadis was up to, and by the very end, he quite literally says, "You know what? I shouldn't be telling you any of this, yet for some bizarre reason, I feel compelled to." That reason, of course, is the influence of Azeroth. Now, in the Midnight expansion, we don't literally know what will happen, but we kind of know what the overarching plot's going to be, and if Iridikron is anything to go by, well, that's when the Harbinger will destroy or infect or do something to the Manifold, something that will force the Titans to return to Azeroth. That is, after all, why Iridikron decides to work with Xal'atath during the Dragonflight expansion. And based on what we know of the Titan leader, he'll be really pissed off when he comes back. Now, I said when they come back. You may be thinking, back from where? Where are they right now? Well, we don't exactly know, but they did zip away off to the cosmic sunset, along with, of course, Sargeras and Illidan at the very end of the Legion expansion. That does mean we know that Sargeras and Illidan are with them. And that is what sets up the last Titan. And the last Titan is when the resolution to that sword will finally come. And putting it all together, the story is very clear. So let me just spell it out so you know exactly what's going on. Much of the mystery of why did Sargeras hit where he hit has now been solved. We know that the Chamber of Heart was a secret installation that the other Titan Keepers didn't know about, that it was built by Arcadis, and that it was an important, a vital control node in the Manifold. The Manifold being all the different Titan installations that are built all across the planet. It maybe seems Sargeras wanted to shut that thing down. We don't exactly know why, but we do know what the Manifold did. Yes, there's the parts of it that, prison up a bunch of old gods. There's also the stuff that can re-originate the planet, as we saw, of course, with Algalon. And then there's the World Core, which is, funnily enough, the bit in the core that appears to have Azeroth trapped in it. In fact, the World Core kind of just looks like a big version of the thing that Iridikron and his buds were also imprisoned in, which, funnily enough, is kind of the logo of the last Titan expansion. So, Sargeras wanted to shut all that shit down. Now, Midnight is going to be announced very soon, and the major threat in Midnight appears to be the Void. But it's what the Void does during that expansion that will bring us into the last Titan. And I have a feeling that whatever happens at that point is probably going to blow our minds a little bit. Now, with all of that said, check out this video next. You need to check it out because it dives deep into everything we know about the next step in this arc.